Today, by the balcony I stood, fighting the voices in my head. It was 3 a.m., the world was silent. But my mind screams in decibels. I heard a me that said I should jump down the balcony. Another that said a rope would do it. I am the firstborn of 3 children. My follower is 7 years behind and his follower is 7 years behind. I've been writing poetry since I was 16 years old. It came about as a result of undergoing depression. I lived in a home where my parents fought a lot, and my dad was also quite abusive, emotionally and physically. Being a firstborn, in fact, those years I had been expelled from school for another long story. But it so happened that now I had to be reading from home. 2004, I was just about 16 years old. And in the process of staying at home, trying to read magazines and newspapers and listening to a lot of radio, a thought came to me. I had lost a sister of mine when she was 5 months old. At the time, I was just 7 years old. And as a child, nobody really explains death to you. So at 16, I'm feeling alone, I'm overstressed, there's nobody to talk to. My parents are fighting a lot. They can't be present for me emotionally. I thought to myself, if my sister was alive, I would have opened up to her about what I'm going through. So she actually inspired my first poem. And that first poem, I remember, was titled A Letter to the Grave. And I was just expressing myself about wishing she was there, telling her what's going on in my life and everything. And the first poem led to another poem, and the rest was history. I was the older child, and so I had a bigger understanding of the world and of life, and my experiences as a growing child, knowing that there was some kind of violence that was just too much for anybody, made my life really difficult because I could not express myself. It was very difficult to open up. And then my self-esteem was really down. I also started experiencing anxiety from such a young age. And by the age of 15, now depression started to set in. And so it affected how I related with people. I was very withdrawn for many parts. And that's why the poetry helped me, because I was just writing down my problems in diary form or writing poems and stuff like that. And so, yeah, so it was poetry and football because they were the places I could really express myself. In fact, I loved staying more in school than going at home. So I was one of those people who would lament when people are closing school. They're so psyched up about going home, and I'm just like, I'm going back to that place, you know. In school, I felt more protected, more expressive. I could just live my life, you know, and you know, not be within too many rules that I couldn't handle. So, yeah. We cannot thrive on violence in search for peace. This violence is cultural. This violence is institutional. This violence is structural. This violence is colonial. So when I was 16, I mean, I had friends in school who I could talk to about what was going on at home. And I mean, the biggest thing they could do was just offer a listening ear. Then when I moved towards campus 2011, I tried to get in touch with a psychologist. They tried to listen up to me, but now I didn't have money to pay for psychosocial support. And so from there, I was lucky enough to get some male friends whom we were starting a Bible study group with. And we realized that all of us had daddy issues. You know, so aside from reading the Bible, we're also just expressing ourselves about our homes and our relationships with our fathers. And so that became a safe space for me, which was quite therapeutic. And they are the biggest support system I've ever had, that still exists to today. And I don't know where I'd have been without those guys, to be honest, because they gave me a strong sense of trust, and that is what I missed for a long time in my childhood up to where just starting early adulthood. With most of our homes, when a child is acting out of order, first of all, the first thing is you're taken as a stubborn person. The second thing is you are possessed. Okay. If you are lucky and your parents are a bit more exposed, they will think, okay, maybe it's a mental health condition. Okay. So I was called stubborn for sure, especially with my dad, and that's why he would keep beating me. And you know, I started running away from home. I became a street child at some point, and I used to get paid to carry luggage in town while shoplifting things from supermarkets to survive. Then at the end of 2004, I ran away from home. Now I wanted to go kill myself somewhere people didn't know me. And at the time, I had never been to Mombasa, so I said, I stole my dad's ATM card. And I withdrew just 500 shillings because that is all I needed for transport to Mombasa. By then, it was just, that was the amount for transport. And the plan was to go to Mombasa and just self-destruct. And there was no like a very particular plan. But the thing is, I remember having let go of my spirit to the heavens, just tired with life, and say, let me go somewhere, you know, if I'm gonna be knocked down by a car, if I'll go to the ocean, I don't know, something that will just let me die, fade away, you know. So, you know, the long story went, I managed to go to some friends of mine who lived in Malindi, and they helped me out, took me in for that time in December, managed to come back home, really long story, but eventually I was taken for prayers, yeah, and that's a very traumatic experience of its own, you know, because I remember my dad just waking me up this morning, telling me to just dress up, take a shower. We left with my mom as well. We went to Kibra, my friend, and it was a hut, you know, a very dingy, dark hut inside, and with so many people. In fact, that's the time I came to understand how in this, our country, women are praying for us more than we even love our own homes, man. Like, there were so many women there, like, waiting to pray, to be prayed for, and a bunch of other guys. And, you know, some of them also had children like me, some younger, some my age and stuff. So it was a long queue. You're waiting for your turn to get inside. I get inside, and, you know, there is incense, it's smoke, these tall guys looking all weird. So my turn gets there, and this guy comes and he takes a hold of me, and he has his assistant beside him. And he's mumbling some prayers, and then he bites my wrist. Okay. Then from his mouth, he spits some liquid that looked like sewage water on this karai that they had. And then he does the same on this side and spits some more sewage water looking like thing, liquid. And then he bites my head, and comes out with 2 broken glasses. I don't know from where, man. Yo, that was traumatic. So somebody is telling you these things are from your body. You know, you're just 16 years old. What the hell? Yeah. And they said there was some kind of witchcraft at our shags, that's the upcountry, that, you know, somebody's trying to separate me from my father, just a lot of things. But even after we knew that, our problems didn't disappear. You know, my dad and I were still on and off. There was still a lot of fighting at home. I still felt uncomfortable. The thing that helped was I was growing older and now spending more time away from home, like, because I had to be in school. So being in school for me really, really assisted. The first time I ran away from home was in April 2004. It was around the time Sean Paul was coming to Kenya.
Get out my head and into the bed, girl. Cause you don't know, plotting out the fantasy. Hey, baby girl, and it's you.
I went to a family friend's house. They traced me quite quickly there. Second time I walked, because we lived in Mlolongo. So I walked from Mlolongo to town. Yeah, which was like roughly 30 kilometers. Took me around 4 hours. And I turned 16. I was in the streets that time. So that's the time I was shoplifting, carrying luggages for people. And, you know, at some supermarket, I was found stealing and administered some mob justice. I'm here because I survived anyway. And at the end of that week, I remember my dad, in fact, the time I was caught in the supermarket, my dad was just from reporting that I'd been missing at Kamukunji police station. And I happened to have a dad who was an uncle who was a cop who worked there. So it so happened that he was just from there the same day to report that I was missing, and he was in town. And so these people have found me. I had a diary. I was still writing the things I was seeing in the streets even that time. And, you know, we had diaries which had places to write contacts from. And so we'd write our parents' contacts, yeah. So they saw my dad's contacts. They asked, you know, if we call your dad and he's not here in this and this time, we are taking you to Kamukunji police station. That's actually what they said. So my father was in town. He showed up in like 3 minutes, you know, and I remember him coming in, and, you know, the shoppers were shocked. Everything is at a standstill. And my dad is coming in with this big Ericsson phone, you know, and walking in, and kijana, hii ndio maisha unataka kuishi, you know. So I had stolen some Nivea petroleum jelly because my mouth was now cracking, and, you know, I needed Vaseline for my lips, and I used to steal milk because milk would keep me going without having to eat so much. And he paid for those things, and then hired a taxi. He wanted me to be put in the boot. The driver refused. Like, hii ni kijana yako mzee, wacha tu akae hapa nyuma, you know. We got home. He had prepared a nyaunyo for the day I will come back. And that's the first day I stood up against him and told him, you're not going to beat me again. He started chasing me in the house. And I went and hid in the bathroom. And I told him, this is your door if you want vunja. So eventually he calmed down. We sat. He asked me to just come out, go take a shower. They gave me dinner and asked me what my problems were. I aired out my problems. They discussed. Things went down for a while, you know. And from then on, I think the second term ended. I was still at home, and then he found a school for me that I enrolled in third term. So I felt regulated for quite a while, but there were still problems at home because there were not things to go away in 3 or 4 months, you know. I still felt extremely policed. I felt the emotional abuse was too much. And then the fact that my parents were vehemently fighting and constantly, I really felt that childhood abandonment, you know, that, you know, when you're a kid, you need so much support from your caregivers. And I think my mom was also really straining to be there for us and be there for the whole family, and still, you know, hustled with my dad's violence. So in between there were good times as well. You know, it's not like my father was always erratic. He had his good moments, you know, which we would be thankful for because they were far in between. Yeah. And I think it's usually just an important piece to put in, because he always would say he's not a bad person. You know, he believed he was a good person. And, you know, from my understanding way many years later, coming to realize that many people who are acting out of their own traumas do not realize how much they are harming the people around them. So, yeah. It took me 15 years to know that there's something called depression, you know. And that happened in 2017, because the year I was turning 29 years old. Depression came to me like a snake. You wouldn't even know it has caught you. And I could feel in late 2016, that something is not right with me, but I couldn't put a finger to it. So January now, 2017, I happened to lose two very close friends of mine. One through low blood pressure, and the other took away his life. And that was very hard because they were my peers, you know. And then I was coming off a situationship that was not very healthy for me. It wasn't like a full-blown relationship yet. And I also didn't have a job at the time. So I was very stressed, and the stress led to depression. And it had been building up for now, what I came to understand later, for 4 or 5 months without me knowing. It was just creeping up on me. So I remember one day coming back home and feeling extremely exhausted. And those suicidal thoughts came back for the second time now since I was 16. I went to the shower. I spent like 2 hours in the shower just letting the water run down, thinking to myself, what will I do to myself when I get out of this bathroom? And I remember, just as it was when I was 16 years old, writing came to my rescue. So I knew if I don't do something, I will harm myself. Either jump off this building, or, you know, nijinyonge kwa nyumba or something, you know. And the thing is, it's not death that I really wanted. I just wanted the pain to go away. And the fact that that feeling was so familiar, you know, I knew if I didn't act immediately, definitely the thoughts in my mind would overpower me. So I left the bathroom naked and wet. I walked to my laptop, opened the laptop, and it was the first time I ever shared on Facebook that I was struggling with suicidal thoughts, and I am depressed, and I need help. So a lot of things happened so fast. In fact, you know, I'm the person people come to talk to when they need things, assistance, emotional struggles, mental struggles, and all that. So for my community to see that I am this downcast, you know, it created a lot of reaction at the time, and people were calling, so many comments, my DMs and everything. And people were saying they were identified with what I was explaining. They just didn't have a language for it, you know, in the comment section, in my inboxes. And, you know, as an artist, I think I got very intrigued. The fact that so many of us are going through this thing, but nobody's really talking about it, you know. So I started going for therapy. and looking for information around mental health, I felt so cheated that 29 years of age in this world, nobody has ever taught me the importance of taking care of my mental health. Nobody. They taught me algebra, they taught me all those crazy things in math class, but nobody ever taught me you need to take care of your mind. Nobody. I was like, what was that education for? If the first thing that I am, I'm not taught about it. We must resist, if not by love, then by the pen. If the grace of God fails us, then by unity. If not by law, then by heart. I call upon the wise. At such a time, what does wisdom look like? How does it sound? Which name does it call you? To realize that kindness and empathy work better. This is for Ibrahim Abachila and the many officers who resort to help than to torture. We see you and we love you. I start looking for, stories about mental health, and I couldn't find African stories around mental health online. There were only stories from white people. And so I said, as a storyteller, I want to start telling my own stories, because for me, documentation is very important as part of history and policy making. And so I started documenting stories about my own healing journey. On the days when I'd wake up, I could only have energy to spread my bed. On some days, I could only have energy to wash the dishes and only do that for the rest of the day. I was a bit lucky. I had friends who would come home and, my male friends, they'd come home, wash the house for me, cook for me, open the curtains for me. One of them was a DJ, so he would come, do live mixes in the house, and we'd all feel like, something good is going on. I still had to battle my thoughts when they left, because they had to go back to their houses. And then now getting into therapy is the part that was incredibly helpful for me, because I got to understand myself on a deeper level. And coming to understand all these mental health terminologies, coming to know that my pain actually had a name. And so I was battling anxiety, I was battling depression, I was also battling post-traumatic stress from the difficult childhood I had witnessed and experienced. And so with time now, just starting to tell my stories in the public now, starting to get invited to TV, to radio, to magazines and blogs and all that, I gained more confidence, because I realized this is actually a pandemic amongst us, and more young people are actually affected by these mental health conditions, but they don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, and we still do not have a robust public health care mental health system that will really help people, especially people living outside Nairobi. And even in Nairobi, accessing counseling services is not the easiest thing to do. So for me, through storytelling, if all of us are starting to tell these stories, then we can start pushing the government to do something about it that will make mental health care accessible to the common mwananchi. And eventually I studied a trauma course and now became a trauma coach, especially supporting people who are struggling with childhood trauma and other stresses. Yeah, so that's how it's been for me. But one more me said, rat poison would do it. Don't crush your bones trying to die. Give your relatives an easy time putting you into your coffin. Death whispers in good sound. Come, my child, come. The memories of my pain replay. I can hear Daddy say, I'm such a disgrace. Mama is crying in the bedroom. There is a hit and run accident on the highway. Someone's daughter abandoned to fate. What's the use of life? I need rest and death will give it to me. Today, by the balcony I stood, fighting the voices in my head. It was 8 a.m. The world had woken up. The kids were going to school, and the milkman had finished delivering the day's packets. The sun was out. The clouds greeted everyone good morning. It looked like a good day. I would go to work in my blue suit and not tell anyone a word. I'm dying silently, dying silently. I'm falling into a pit that's taking my heart away. I'm going. My skin is falling, my heart contracting. This is me and my goodbyes, my last laughters, my last smiles. But it's another day. It's my time to fake it again.